Well, hello everyone. My name is Dar Rath. I'm the pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Port Elgin, Ontario, Canada. And each week I bring you a story that takes about 5 minutes to watch. And the story this week is from a book called Interesting Stories for Curious People by Bill O'Neill. And the title of this story is called Before Columbus. Earlier we learned how most of us were given false information about our grade school teachers when they told us the leaders of Europe believed the earth was flat in the 15th century. Thanks to Ptolemy, Columbus knew the world was a sphere, that he wouldn't fall off as he sailed across the Atlantic to Asia or the Americas. But our teachers were right when they told us Columbus was the first outsider to discover America, right? Well, not really. Of course, the Americas were populated by numerous indigenous tribes and peoples, some of them quite sophisticated, such as the Mayans, Incas, and Aztecs. But those people were, for the most part, native to the land, and therefore didn't discover it. For centuries, Christopher Columbus was believed to have been the most non-indigenous person to discover the Americas. But in the 1960s, that idea began to be challenged by different theories. Let's start with some of the stranger theories. One theory that has come up from time to time is that the ancient Phoenicians landed on the East Coast sometime in the first millennium BC. The Phoenicians were known for their seafaring prowess, but their activities were primarily limited to the Mediterranean Sea. Those who believe the Phoenicians discovered America think that one or more of their ships were blown off course and ended up in the northeast United States. As proof, advocates point to some potential pieces of evidence, such as the Dighton Rock in Massachusetts. The Dighton Rock is a rock originally discovered in the 17th century that has what appears to be undeciphered writings on it. Other theories have placed the Romans, Greeks, and even the Hebrews in the Americas based on little to no evidence. One of the most interesting theories of the Old World contact with the Americas came from a Norwegian explorer, Thor Heyerdahl. Heyerdahl believed that the ancient Egyptians could have made the trip across the Atlantic Ocean on boats made of papyrus. Based on ancient Egyptian depictions of their boats, Heyerdahl constructed a boat he named the Ra. In 1969, he left Morocco with a small crew for the Americas. The Ra failed, but 1 year later, he and his crew left Morocco again in the Ra II and made it to the Caribbean. Heyerdahl's voyage fascinated the world and proved that such a trip could have been done, but scholars were quick to point out that it didn't prove the trip was ever made. Still, another theory is that Chinese explorer Zheng He discovered the west coast of what would become America in the early 15th century, about 50 years before Columbus landed in the Caribbean. As with other alternative theories, there's no documentation that proves this theory, and nearly every mainstream Chinese historian has stated that it is a pseudo-history. So that leaves us with the Vikings. More than 500 years before Columbus sailed across the Atlantic, the Vikings were making their own incredible journeys. They discovered and colonized many islands in the North Atlantic on their way to colonizing Greenland in the late 10th and early 11th centuries. The Vikings' presence in Greenland is well documented through archaeological evidence and sagas that were written by Icelandic poets in later decades and centuries. Among the sagas written about Greenland were ones that described Vinland. To many scholars, Vinland sounded like North America. It was home to Skraelings, who sounded very much like America Indians, and the flora and fauna also matched that of the North Americans. Historians and archaeologists searched and searched for evidence of Vinland in America, sometimes coming up with false leads. Finally, in the 1960s, the remains of a small Viking Age settlement were discovered near Lanceau Meadows, Labrador, Canada. The structure and style of the homes found at the site, in addition to unearthed iron artifacts, proved that Vikings did in fact settle in North America. And they did so nearly 500 years before Columbus made his voyage. Well, my husband and I actually had been to the Viking settlement in Newfoundland, up near St. Anthony's Point in Newfoundland, and we did a tour of all the interesting artifacts that were there. It showed some of the settlement areas, some of the buildings that they would have had, and so it was very interesting to have toured that, and also to have read this story to show that in fact these Vikings did come to Canada before Columbus made his voyage. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that 5-minute talk from Interesting Stories for Curious People, and have a great day and blessings on your day. Thanks for taking 5.